My thoughts on the Daytona 24 hours?
It was pretty good. Hey, I'm going to be talking about the results of this year's 24 Hours of Daytona. So if you haven't seen it yet and you're waiting for it to show up on IMSA's channel on the YouTube, that will be showing up probably 2 weeks from now. This year's 24 Hours of Daytona was not a disappointment. Not that last year's was that shabby, but this year, being that there were new cars in the top class GTP, you didn't know what to expect. You had BMW that barely got through the testing and qualifying, so we were a little shaky on how they would perform. We're going to talk about that. You have the Porsche that performed absolutely wonderful in the testing, not so great in the qualifying. We're going to talk about that. The Cadillacs were roaring and they did a pretty darn good job. And of course we have Acura. Let's go ahead and break this race down, starting with BMW. The BMWs had the worst of luck. During testing, they were actually missing parts and they were delayed, and they did get them, which made them late to the game when it came to testing, as well as qualifying. And it showed in the race. You had one car that was several laps down, and the other that was pulled into the garage and never came back out. The team that I had the most hope for was Porsche, but they were plagued with issues as well, being bumped by a Cadillac, which threw a car off several laps. They also had to change a power unit in one of the cars, which delayed it and put it down again several laps. There was another off-road excursion. It was bumped again by a car behind them. Boom, right into a sign. And then you had the number 6 that had some motor issues, had to be put into the garage, but believe it or not, they came back out. Cadillac also had some issues getting hit behind. They also had a car that had a gearbox problem. They changed it out and it went back out. But the big winner was the number 60 Acura. It dominated the race, the team was prepared, and it showed. The big surprise, though, was the Team Proton. The CrowdStrike P2 car was in the lead for numerous laps. That Proton car was just gradually catching up. And that very last lap, oh my goodness, it was more than epic. Right at the line, the car won the race. As I said, this was a great event. Almost every class had some clashes and great racing. It was by far one of the best and most exciting 24 Daytona that I've ever seen. And the best part about it was definitely the fact that the GTP cars performed actually well. 8 of the 9 cars finished the race. That is stellar. And I'm saying this because I just know our history. When you usually have new cars in a class, especially what we call a prototype class, which it is prototype because you're being experimental with a car that was built up specifically for a race to fit into a class, and usually there's cars plagued with problems. I can remember one year in the Daytona, for example, where almost every GTP car, I think they were called back then in the 80s or 90s, they all died. There was only one car that actually finished, but anyway, the point being is that yes, for this to be the first year for these cars, this was a fantastic performance. They provided great racing. The last thing that I want to point out about this is that in Europe, you have the WEC, which has their hypercar. Same concept. You have the internal combustion engine combined with a power unit, electric motor. And those cars, within their first years, they're going on their 3rd year this year, by the way. Those cars are slower than the P2 spec cars when you actually let the P2 cars run with all their full potential. They were actually slowed down on purpose so they would not embarrass the top class, which again, for the WEC, that's the World Endurance Championship in Europe. So those top cars would actually be the faster cars. Ironically, the same thing was thought to be, it was going to happen with the P2 cars in the United States. So those were slowed down too for our hypercars. The shocker is during qualifying, which was the number 60 car that did eventually win the race, that car was just a fractions of a seconds slower than the fastest DPI car of last year's qualifying. So they actually did not have to slow down the P2 cars. What makes this very interesting and unique is that you're going to have some of these GTP cars participate in Le Mans in Europe. And so if these cars are that quick, we really don't have any data to actually compare the two. We won't know that until Sebring, which is the very next race. But it'd be really interesting to see the speed differential and the power differential from the US GTP cars versus the WEC hypercars. Just something to pay attention to. Next, we're actually going to take a look at some of the action on track, mostly in car. In fact, I think all in car views. So you can just get an idea of some of the things that happened during this race, because there were some really great moments. And I captured the ones that I thought were some of the best moments in the race. So let's take a look at that. Starting with Porsche. And as I said, Porsche was actually, I didn't say anything before the race, but I really had high hopes for Porsche. And you can see from this, they actually had some potential here to actually keep up and pass the number 60, the fastest car on the track. That's that Acura. So what you're looking at here is actually that Porsche catching up to the Acura. And the cool thing about this is, and this is what I like about multi-class racing, is that what you're going to see is that Acura, that driver is actually really smart. He realizes that Porsche, and you can see him getting closer and closer, he realizes that Porsche is catching him. What he's going to do is he's going to use these slower cars, that'd be the LMP3s, the P2s, and the GTD cars. He's going to use those as blockers to get around and keep that Porsche behind him. So I'm going to shut up and let you take a look at this. Just real quick, you're also going to notice, look at that, he got him. You're going to see flashing lights. That's the Porsche actually signaling the closer cars to basically get the heck out of the way, because I'm trying to catch this Acura. Well, I can tell you that what eventually happened is that it was never able to catch that Acura, and I believe it was actually it was at that point of where the car actually got hit behind and was thrown off. Next, I'm going to have the some views of the Cadillac, which was basically doing the same thing. Cadillac was almost in their own race with Cadillac, so you had a lot of back and forth between the three Cadillacs in the race. And this clip is just one of the chase scenes from a Cadillac chasing down another Cadillac. See that gearbox? So next, we're going to go and take a look at some of the action in the GTD race. Now that, if you've seen the race, you know exactly what I'm referring to. There were 3 cars actually battling it out. That'd be the WeatherTech car, the number 3 Corvette, and then you also had the Lexus. They were going back and forth a lot. And this scene is, again, a really great chase with a big surprise. This is the Corvette we're looking at now. Reeling them in. There's a reason why that camera veered out that way. That's why the camera veered out that way. All that chasing, Corvette wasn't paying attention, and the WeatherTech car comes and takes his place. on him. He is on him. Yep. Not so fast. Second try. And he got him. So again, that was such a great exchange between those three cars. If you notice, there was a black Aston Martin. That car did pass the Lexus for the overall lead for GTD, but that was a GTD M car, the green symbol for the GTDs. So yes, that's a combination of a pro driver and an amateur driver. It beat all the pro drivers. So that car actually did come in first overall, but the WeatherTech car was the leader for GTD Pro, and the Corvette did come in second. Lastly, I just want to say congratulations again to the number 60. It was a phenomenal race. The next race is Sebring, and I'm so looking forward to that after seeing this. It'll be interesting some of the adjustments that have been made to some of the cars, especially in the GT class. There were some cars like the Ferrari, which was very disappointing. They do this thing called balance of performance, and so because those are brand new cars, obviously that performance balance was not in tune with or in line with the other cars because it was like it didn't show up. And the same thing goes for the Porsche. So it's a little ironic but not surprising. The two brand fresh new cars of this event did not perform well. Again, that is a result of the organization not quite understanding the dynamics of those cars yet. So really Daytona was a test bed to get those cars balanced performance equally with the other cars. So I would expect in Sebring that there would definitely be a difference in how those cars perform at Sebring. So we'll see. Finally, again, just want to congratulate the number 6. It was such a great race, and I'm going to leave you with this. I'm not going to say a word, so you can just enjoy it.